It's hard to put into words exactly how it feels to live with money constantly slipping through your fingers, like trying to catch smoke. I'm 26 now, and every day feels like a negotiation, a balancing act where the rules keep changing, and the deck is stacked against me. The cost of everything climbs higher and higher, but my paycheck never quite catches up. It's like being trapped in a loop, endlessly running but never getting anywhere. I remember when I first moved out on my own after college, full of hope and energy. I imagined that with a job and a steady income, I could finally start building the life I'd dreamed about. Maybe even travel, save a little, think about buying a home someday. But reality hit fast and hard. Rent in the city where I live is astronomical. Just a tiny apartment in a not-so-great neighborhood costs more than I ever thought it would. Utilities, groceries, transportation, student loans, phone bills, all these expenses add up to a mountain that feels impossible to climb. And then there's the sneaky little things that pile on, a broken phone screen, a car that needs fixing, medical bills that weren't planned. I make enough to pay my bills on time, barely, but there's never really anything left over for anything else. I've learned to cut corners everywhere. I skip meals sometimes, choosing hunger over dipping into savings or racking up credit card debt. I stopped going out with friends because a night out means 2 or 3 times the cost of what I could spend on food at home. I don't buy new clothes unless it's an absolute emergency. Even when I do shop, it's always the cheapest stuff, often worn or on sale. But it's not just about the money. It's the constant stress that wears on me, the quiet anxiety that settles in the back of my mind, the feeling that one wrong move could tip everything into chaos. I get so tired sometimes. Tired of budgeting to the last cent, tired of saying no to invitations, tired of feeling like I'm watching everyone else live while I'm stuck on the sidelines. I catch myself dreaming about the things I've had to give up, a weekend getaway, a nice dinner out, the chance to buy a decent laptop without worrying for months about how I'll pay it off. Sometimes I wonder if I'm doing something wrong, if I'm just not working hard enough, not managing my money well enough, or if maybe I'm just not smart enough to figure out a way out of this. But the truth is, I work 2 jobs sometimes, putting in 50, 60 hours a week just to keep afloat. My main job pays the bills, and the side gig helps with the extras that pop up unexpectedly. Even then, I'm barely making progress. The rising cost of rent and groceries and everything else always seems to eat up any small gains. There are days when I feel invisible, like the system isn't built for people like me to thrive. The economic environment makes it clear, you're supposed to hustle harder, be more flexible, make sacrifices. But no one talks about what it feels like inside, the loneliness, the shame, the crushing weight of uncertainty. Sometimes I lie awake at night, imagining a different life, one where money isn't a source of constant worry but a tool for freedom and choice. My mental health has definitely taken a hit. Anxiety and sleepless nights have become familiar companions. I find myself snapping at friends or family when I'm overwhelmed, then feeling guilty afterward. There's this constant low-level dread, like waiting for the other shoe to drop. I have health insurance, but sometimes the copays are too high, so I put off doctor visits until it's an emergency. It's a cycle that feels impossible to break. Despite all this, I still hold on to hope. I believe there's something better ahead, even if it's not in sight right now. I remind myself that this pressure won't last forever, that if I keep pushing through, maybe I can catch up someday. I try to celebrate the small victories, a week without overdraft fees, a paid-off credit card balance, a little money saved for emergencies. I've also started to think more seriously about what kind of future I want. The idea of homeownership feels like a distant fantasy, but I'm learning about personal finance, investing small amounts, and trying to be smarter with my money. I want to break the cycle, to build something sustainable for myself. Maybe I'll go back to school, or switch careers to something that pays better and offers stability. But all of those dreams are on hold for now because survival takes all my energy. It's lonely sometimes, this struggle. People don't always understand how exhausting it is to live paycheck to paycheck in a world that feels designed for those with more. I want to talk about it openly, to be honest without feeling judged or like I'm complaining. Because this isn't about laziness or bad decisions, It's about a system that's making it harder for young people like me to get ahead. So here I am, telling you this story, not because I want pity, but because this is real. This is the experience of so many young adults today, caught in the squeeze between rising costs and stagnant wages, trying to keep hope alive in a world that often feels like it's moving too fast and leaving us behind. If there's one thing I want you to understand, it's this: it's okay to feel overwhelmed. It's okay to struggle. And it's okay to dream, even when the path to those dreams feels uncertain. Because despite everything, I'm still here, still trying, still hoping for a day when financial pressure doesn't dictate every choice I make, and that hope keeps me going. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. Every morning, I wake up to the same knot in my stomach, the quiet pressure of bills, rent, and the endless stream of expenses that seem to multiply while my paycheck stays stubbornly the same. It's like running on a treadmill that speeds up just when you think you've caught a steady pace. No matter how hard I push, I never seem to get anywhere closer to breathing easy. The economic world around me feels like a vast machine, and I'm just a small gear caught in the grind, turning but never moving forward. I'm 26 now, working 2 part-time jobs that barely cover my monthly costs. I remember when I first started out, fresh from college, full of hope and ideas about the future. I thought a degree would be my ticket to a better life, a stepping stone to something meaningful. But reality hit hard. The job market was saturated, wages stagnated, and every raise felt like a drop in the ocean compared to the rising tide of rent, groceries, insurance, and the sneaky fees that appear out of nowhere. The cost of living just keeps growing faster than I can keep up, and it's exhausting. Some days, I catch myself holding back tears because I can't afford to buy groceries beyond the bare essentials. Fresh vegetables, a nice meal, a coffee treat, luxuries I used to take for granted. Now, I calculate every purchase like a math problem, always wondering if I can get by without it. I often skip meals or eat leftovers I'm tired of just to save money. When the power bill comes, I'm tempted to turn off the heat even when I'm freezing. It feels like my body is constantly negotiating survival with a system that never seems to care. The emotional weight is suffocating. It's not just the money, it's the isolation that comes with it. I watch my friends move into apartments with better kitchens, go out to dinners, or travel on weekends. Sometimes they ask why I'm always too busy or can't come out, and I smile, but inside I feel a sting of shame. I'm embarrassed to admit that my budget won't stretch to even the simplest social plans. There's a loneliness and financial pressure, a quiet feeling that you don't quite belong in the world where others seem to live with ease. I've had to postpone so many dreams. I wanted to go back to school to specialize in something I'm passionate about, maybe graphic design or counseling. I dreamt of starting a small business, a cozy bookstore or a cafe where people could gather. But those plans feel like distant stars now, beautiful but unreachable. Instead, I'm stuck putting every spare cent into keeping the lights on and the fridge humming. It's a daily compromise between what I want and what I can afford, and most days, necessity wins. Sometimes I wonder if this is just how life is meant to be for people like me, caught in a system where expenses rise faster than income, where the promise of upward mobility feels like a lie. It's not just numbers on a page, it's the crushing reality that hard work doesn't always equal progress. I've learned to budget with an almost surgical precision, clipping coupons, hunting for discounts, taking on side gigs that sap my energy but fill the bank account just enough to avoid crisis. But the anxiety never really leaves. It lurks in the back of my mind like a shadow, ready to grow if one unexpected expense appears, a car repair, a medical bill, a tax surprise. Still, I keep going. I remind myself that this season isn't forever, that maybe, just maybe, a shift will come. I hold on to small moments of hope, a good conversation with a friend, the quiet satisfaction of paying off a bill, the rare afternoon when I can walk in the park without thinking about money. I try to find joy in the little things because the big ones seem too far away. Talking about this feels vulnerable, but it also feels necessary. I want people to understand how deep this struggle goes beyond just numbers. It's about dignity, freedom, and the desperate wish to live without fear of falling behind. My story isn't unique, there are so many others like me, caught in this relentless cycle, hoping for a break, for a future where money doesn't dictate every choice or define every moment. For now, I hold on to the quiet resilience that keeps me moving forward, step by small step, even when the path is steep and the horizon looks blurred. One day, I hope to look back and see this time not as a trap, but as the chapter that taught me strength, patience, and the power of hope. I never thought I'd end up feeling so stuck. Like, really stuck. I'm in my mid-20s, working a job that should be enough to keep me afloat, but somehow, it never quite is. Every month feels like a tightrope walk where one wrong step, maybe a surprise bill, an unexpected car repair, or even just the rising cost of groceries, could send me tumbling down into deeper stress. It's exhausting. When I graduated college, I was full of hope and excitement. I had dreams, big ones. I wanted to travel, maybe start a small business one day, maybe even buy a place of my own before I hit 30. But now, those dreams feel like distant stars I can barely see, let alone reach. I keep telling myself I just need to hold on a little longer, but how long is that, really? It's hard not to feel like I'm trapped in this endless cycle. The economy, well, it feels like it's working against me. Rent keeps going up, sometimes by hundreds of dollars a year. Utilities climb. Insurance premiums, taxes, even the price of a cup of coffee or a bus ticket, it's all a little higher every time I look. Meanwhile, my paycheck hasn't budged much. Promotions and raises are rare, and when they come, inflation usually swallows them whole. I remember last year when my rent jumped by 10%, and my paycheck barely covered that increase alone. It's like running in place while the treadmill speeds up. The strangest part is the mental toll. Financial pressure isn't just about numbers on a bank statement. It weighs on me every single day. Waking up with a knot in my stomach because I have to figure out how to pay for groceries and that overdue credit card bill. Checking my bank app and feeling that small surge of hope if I see a bit more than usual, only to have it deflate when I remember all the automatic payments coming soon. It's a constant background noise of anxiety I can't mute. Sometimes I find myself avoiding looking at my finances altogether because it's too painful. But then the stress grows even worse, because uncertainty is a monster in itself. How do you plan for anything, let alone a future, when every day is about survival? The reality is that I'm not just juggling expenses, I'm balancing fear, shame, and a growing sense of failure. I feel like I should be doing better by now, that my peers are doing better, but maybe they're just better at hiding it. I've had to make choices I never imagined. Like skipping doctor appointments because I can't afford the copay. Or delaying car maintenance until it's absolutely critical. Even little things that used to bring me joy, dining out with friends, buying new clothes, or even just getting a coffee from a cafe, have become luxuries I rarely indulge in. It's not about being cheap, it's about necessity. Socially, it's isolating. I don't invite friends over often because my place feels cramped and worn down, and I'm embarrassed by what I can't fix or update. I avoid gatherings that require spending, and sometimes I just don't have the energy to keep up with conversations about travel, new gadgets, or weekend plans. It's like I'm living in a bubble of stress while the world keeps moving on, and I'm stuck trying to keep my head above water. But I'm not totally hopeless. I do try to cope. I've gotten pretty good at budgeting, clipping coupons, and hunting for discounts. I try to remind myself that this phase isn't permanent, even if it feels like it sometimes. I read stories online of people who have been in similar places and managed to claw their way out. And I do have some support, a few friends who understand and check in on me, and family who sometimes help in small ways. Those connections are lifelines. Still, the postponed dreams weigh heavy. The trip to Europe I promised myself after graduation. The chance to take a class or learn a new skill that might boost my income. The hope of saving for a down payment on a home, something that feels more like a fantasy than a real goal. Sometimes I wonder if I'll ever get there. Or if I'm just destined to keep treading water in this system that seems designed to keep people like me in place, working hard but never quite moving forward. It's a complicated mix of resilience and exhaustion. I want to believe that better days are coming, but the daily grind wears down that optimism. I'm trying, though. Every small victory, a bill paid on time, a week where I don't dip into savings, a positive review from my boss, feels like a beacon. I cling to those moments because they remind me I'm not invisible, not powerless. In the quiet moments, when the noise of life dies down, I sometimes let myself dream again. I imagine a future where money isn't the constant worry, where I can breathe freely and plan boldly. Maybe that's naive, but maybe it's necessary. Because without dreams, what's left to hold on to? For now, I keep going, trapped in this system but not yet defeated, hoping, always hoping, that someday the scales will tip in my favor. Until then, I keep walking that tightrope, one cautious step at a time. It's not just about money. It's about dignity, peace of mind, and the chance to live the life I want, not just survive it. And maybe that's the hardest part of all. Sometimes, it feels like I'm running on a treadmill that's speeding up every day, and no matter how hard I push, I'm not getting anywhere. I'm 26, working 2 jobs, and yet my bank account is constantly hovering just above zero. It's not that I'm careless with money. I've tried every budgeting app, every saving trick, every sacrifice. But the truth is, the economic environment I live in is a beast I can't tame. The rent on my small apartment in the city keeps creeping higher. Utilities rise with the seasons. Groceries are a constant source of stress, prices are unpredictable and often too steep for the limited budget I have. Public transportation costs go up just as my shifts start changing, forcing me to grab taxis sometimes to make it on time. And then there's the hidden expenses, medical co-pays, replacing a broken phone, the occasional car repair. Each one is a hit that pushes me further from any sense of financial security. It's exhausting to live like this. I wake up each morning with a knot in my stomach, wondering how I'll stretch the next paycheck to cover the essentials. Sometimes, I feel embarrassed talking about money because it feels like a private failure, a personal flaw. But it's not. It's the system. A system where wages have barely budged while the cost of living races ahead. The gap between what I earn and what I need isn't just a number, it's a cage. I remember a time not too long ago when I dreamed bigger. I wanted to go back to school, maybe study something I was passionate about, art or literature, but the thought of taking on more debt was terrifying. So, those dreams got shelved, replaced by the immediate necessity of paying bills and putting food on the table. I miss the freedom of thinking about my future without the crushing weight of financial pressure. Social life? Forget it. Going out with friends means choosing between a night of laughter and a night of stretching rent money. I've become the expert at no thanks, maybe next time, and the truth is, I'm tired of next time never coming. Isolation seeps in slowly, but it's hard to blame friends who don't understand the silent, ongoing battle I fight every day. The emotional toll is real. Some nights, I lie awake thinking about how this relentless stress is shaping me, wearing down my hope, making me question if I'm capable of anything more than survival. It's a lonely place to be, feeling like the system was designed to keep people like me just barely afloat, never quite able to climb out. But I try to hold on to small moments of grace, a morning coffee I can afford, a text from a friend, a quiet walk in the park, that remind me I'm more than my bank balance. Coping means learning to live with uncertainty and disappointment, but it also means finding pockets of joy where I can. I've started journaling again, letting my frustrations and dreams pour out onto the page. Sometimes, that's enough to remind me that I'm still here, still fighting. I look for new skills online, hoping one day they might open doors to a better job or a career that pays more than just enough to survive. I don't have all the answers. Most days, I just put one foot in front of the other. But I hold on to a quiet hope that things can change, that this pressure doesn't have to be permanent. That the system might shift, or maybe I'll find a way to break free from it. For now, I'm learning to live in the tension between where I am and where I want to be, trying not to lose myself in the struggle. This is my truth, a young adult caught in an economy that demands more than I can give, yet still trying to carve out a life worth living. It's hard. It's painful. But it's real. And I'm here. It's hard to remember the last time I truly felt at ease with money. Not just a fleeting moment of relief, but a steady, comfortable feeling that I wasn't constantly fighting a losing battle. I'm 27 now, and for as long as I can remember, my financial situation has felt like a tightrope stretched over a bottomless pit. Every step I take is cautious, measured, but no matter how carefully I balance, the ground keeps shifting beneath me. The economic environment isn't exactly forgiving these days. Rent prices have climbed so high in my city that finding a decent place within my budget feels like searching for a needle in a haystack. Groceries, utilities, transport, everything seems to creep up a little more every month. Yet my paycheck, the income one depends on to keep my life running, grows at a snail's pace, if at all. It's this endless mismatch between income and expenses that wears on me the most. Some mornings, I wake up with a knot in my stomach because I'm already running through the math in my head before my feet even touch the floor. Did I pay that electricity bill? Is the rent due next week, or is it 2 weeks from now? How much did I spend on coffee yesterday, and can I skip it today without feeling like I'm depriving myself of the little joys? These aren't just practical questions, they're tiny stressors that add up to a constant weight pressing down on my chest. There's a helplessness in watching your costs balloon while your income seems frozen in time. The rent increase last year pushed me out of the neighborhood I loved because I simply couldn't afford to stay. I remember staring at the listing for the new apartment, a smaller place with fewer amenities, and feeling crushed that I had to downgrade my home to make ends meet. It was like stepping backward in my own life. But what choice did I have? Even the smallest purchases come with hesitation. I've learned to delay replacing my worn-out shoes, fix broken things myself rather than hire help, and often skip social outings with friends. The fear of overspending on a night out lingers long after I say no. It's isolating, really, watching your friends live more freely while you count every dollar, feeling like you're tethered to a financial anchor dragging you down. Sometimes I wonder if I'm alone in this feeling. But then I see the news about inflation, stagnant wages, and rising living costs. I hear stories from colleagues who are struggling just as much or more. It's a collective anxiety, a shared frustration that there's no easy fix and no clear path out. We're all caught in a system that seems designed to keep us scrambling, expenses rising faster than incomes, debt quietly accumulating, dreams slowly fading into the background. Emotionally, it's exhausting. The pressure seeps into everything. I find myself less spontaneous, more cautious, and sometimes downright fearful of the future. When friends talk about traveling or buying homes, I smile and nod, but inside I'm mourning the dreams I've had to put on hold. A trip abroad, starting a family, even just saving enough to move into a better apartment, all feel like distant luxuries rather than realistic goals. I cope the best I can. I try to celebrate small victories, paying off a credit card, sticking to a budget, finding a discount on groceries. I remind myself that even though progress is slow, it's still progress. I seek comfort in routines that don't cost much but bring me peace, reading, cooking meals at home, going for walks. I lean on close friends who understand and don't judge. And sometimes, when the pressure feels unbearable, I allow myself to be vulnerable, to admit that it's hard, that I'm scared, and that I'm exhausted. But beneath all the stress and worry, there's still a flicker of hope. I believe that things can change, that this economic squeeze won't last forever. I hold on to the idea that my hard work will pay off eventually, that I can build a more stable future if I keep pushing through. It's not an easy belief to maintain, especially on tough days, but it's what keeps me moving forward. For now, I'm learning to live with the tension, balancing the harsh reality of financial pressure with the quiet hope for something better. It's a delicate dance, but it's mine to navigate. And maybe, by sharing this story, I can remind others that they're not alone in feeling trapped, but that together, we can keep holding on to the dreams that make life worth living. It's like trying to fill a bucket with a hole at the bottom. Every month, no matter how hard I try to keep up, expenses leak away whatever income one managed to bring in, and I'm left with less than before. The past few years have been a constant battle against this invisible tide that pulls me under, bills rising faster than my paychecks, prices climbing while my hope for financial freedom shrinks. It feels like I'm trapped in a system that's designed not for me to get ahead, but just barely to survive. I'm 27 now, and if I'm honest, I didn't expect life to feel this heavy at my age. When I graduated college, I had dreams, big ones. I wanted to travel, maybe live abroad for a while, start saving seriously, and eventually buy a small place of my own. But those dreams have quietly slipped away, pushed aside by the day-to-day urgency of just making ends meet. Rent has gone up, groceries cost more than I ever thought, and every unexpected expense feels like a punch to the gut. A car repair, a medical bill, or even a surge in utilities can send me spiraling. It's not like I haven't tried to keep it all together. I work a full-time job in marketing, plus I picked up freelance gigs whenever I can, squeezing out extra hours after long days just to try to close the gap. But the gap doesn't close, it only widens. My paycheck covers rent, utilities, groceries, and a little bit of transportation. What's left is barely enough to chip away at student loans or build a modest emergency fund. Credit cards are a dangerous crutch I try not to lean on too much, but sometimes, they feel like the only option when unexpected expenses hit. Some days I wake up feeling like I'm on a treadmill set at an impossible speed. I run and run, but I don't get anywhere. I look at friends who seem to be buying homes, traveling for fun, or saving for retirement, and I wonder what they're doing differently. I don't want to feel jealous, but I can't help it. There's this gnawing sense that maybe I'm failing somehow, that if I just worked harder or was smarter with money, things would be different. But deep down, I know the system itself is rigged against people like me, young adults starting out in a world where wages barely keep pace with inflation and costs keep rising with no end in sight. I've learned to make sacrifices I never thought I would. I cook most meals at home, skipping nights out or coffee runs that used to feel like little treats. I buy second-hand clothes, limit gifts to close family, and avoid subscriptions I can live without. I try to find free or low-cost ways to unwind, like walks in the park or evenings with a borrowed book. Sometimes, I stay up late searching for deals or budgeting apps that might somehow make a difference, but it's exhausting. There's a dull ache of fatigue that runs just beneath the surface most days. The emotional weight of this pressure is crushing. It seeps into every part of my life. I worry constantly about what happens if I get sick and can't work, if the landlord raises rent again, or if something breaks that I can't afford to fix. I feel anxious when opening the mailbox because bills and notices often fill the envelope. There's shame, too, in asking for help or admitting I'm struggling. The stigma of financial hardship is real, and it makes me retreat even further into silence. I'm lonely in this. Many people don't see the struggle because I keep it hidden. It's easier to put on a brave face than to explain the tangled mess of numbers and worries. But inside, it feels like being caught in a cage with no key, pacing back and forth while watching others live freely on the outside. It's hard not to feel hopeless when the future looks like more of the same. Sometimes, I ask myself if I'll ever break free, or if this will be my life indefinitely. Yet, despite everything, I haven't given up entirely. I still hold on to the smallest threads of hope, even if they're fragile. I dream about the day I can stop living paycheck to paycheck, when I can finally save enough for a down payment on a home or take a trip that's just for me, not for work or necessity. I imagine waking up without the tight knot of financial stress in my chest. Those dreams keep me moving forward, even if progress is painfully slow. I've started to educate myself more about personal finance, not because I think it will solve all my problems, but because knowledge feels like a tool, something to wield against the uncertainty. I'm learning to prioritize, to set tiny goals, and celebrate small wins, like managing to save a few dollars here and there or paying off a small debt. It's not glamorous, but it's real. Sometimes, I think about how different life could have been if the economic environment were kinder. If wages grew with the cost of living. If housing were affordable. If safety nets were stronger and more accessible. It's hard not to get angry about the system that keeps so many young people stuck in this grind. But I try to channel that frustration into determination, into the resolve to find whatever opportunities one can, to build a future that isn't defined by constant financial fear. For now, I keep going, one day, one paycheck, one small step at a time. I remind myself that I'm not alone in this, that many people are struggling with the same pressures, and that maybe by sharing my story, I can help break the silence around what so many quietly endure. My financial situation might feel like a cage, but I refuse to let it define who I am or what I hope for. Because even in the hardest moments, I believe in the possibility of better days. I never thought I'd be writing this, really laying it all out like this, but here I am. Maybe it's because sometimes the weight of it all gets too heavy to carry alone, and the only way to breathe is to finally admit just how trapped I feel. I'm 27, and for as long as I can remember, money has been this constant, low-grade pressure in the background of my life. Not the exciting kind of pressure that pushes you to chase a dream or a goal, but the relentless kind that squeezes your chest every morning when you open your eyes. It's the worry about rent, groceries, bills, car repairs, and then, always, what's left at the end of the month. Spoiler, usually, it's not much, or nothing at all. The thing is, I work hard. I have a steady job, one that I'm grateful to have in a world that feels so unstable. But no matter how many extra shifts I pick up or how carefully I budget, my income just never seems to keep pace with the rising costs around me. Rent has gone up again this year, the grocery bill is creeping higher, and every little unexpected expense feels like a punch in the gut. Car breaks down? That's a $1,000 problem I wasn't ready for. Need new shoes or a coat? Better wait. That's how my daily decisions get shaped, not by what I want or need, but by what I can afford to survive. There's a numbness that comes with this kind of financial pressure. It's not just about counting pennies, it's the feeling that no matter what I do, the system is stacked against me. Expenses grow faster than my paycheck, and it feels like I'm on a treadmill running just to stay in the same place. I look at my bank account and I see the limits of my world. That realization hits me hard every single time. Sometimes I wonder what it would feel like not to be constantly anxious about money. Like when I see friends planning trips or talking about buying a home or even just going out for dinner without a second thought. I want to be part of that. I want to believe that I can have those things someday. But for now, those dreams feel so far away that it almost hurts to think about them. I've had to postpone so many of my hopes, finishing school, traveling, starting a family. All of it is on hold because first, I have to get through each month without falling behind. Emotionally, it's exhausting. There are days when the stress feels like a storm cloud hovering over my head, making it hard to focus, to smile, to even get out of bed. I feel embarrassed sometimes, like I'm failing somehow because I can't figure it out. But it's not a lack of trying. It's the reality of the world I'm living in. It's the system where the costs keep rising, wages barely budge, and the safety nets are thin or non-existent. I cope the best way I can. I've learned to find small moments of joy that don't cost a thing, walks in the park, calls with friends, reading books from the library. I've gotten creative with meals, learning to stretch every dollar at the grocery store. And I try to remind myself that this isn't forever. That I'm not defined by my bank balance. But some days, that's easier said than done. At night, when the house is quiet, I let myself dream a little. I imagine having enough to not just survive, but to live. I dream of a future where I don't have to choose between paying a bill or fixing my car, where I can save for something more than emergencies, where I can take a trip without counting every cent. I dream of a life where money isn't a chain, but a tool to help me grow and thrive. It's a strange thing, this mix of hope and despair. The hope keeps me moving forward, keeps me working and saving and trying. But the despair whispers that maybe the system isn't meant for people like me to get ahead. That it's easier to just accept the grind and forget about those bigger dreams. I want to believe that's not true. I want to believe that if I keep pushing, if I keep learning and adapting, one day things will shift. That the world will change enough for me to catch a break, to breathe, to build something better. Until then, I'm here, living this everyday reality, feeling trapped but still holding on. Because what else can I do? I have to keep trying, keep hoping, keep fighting for the future I know I deserve, even if it feels just out of reach right now. This is my story. It's messy and imperfect and honestly, sometimes really hard to face. But it's real. And maybe by sharing it, I'll find a little light in the darkness. A reminder that I'm not alone. I still remember the exact moment I realized just how tight everything had gotten, the way my stomach sank as I stared at the grocery receipt, watching the total climb higher than it had the week before, even though I'd barely changed what I was buying. It was one of those little shocks that, in hindsight, felt less like a surprise and more like the slow unraveling of something I'd tried to ignore for years, the unrelenting squeeze of money tightening around my life, day after day. I'm 27 now, and it feels like I've been running on a treadmill set at an impossible speed, where no matter how fast I go, I'm never really getting anywhere. The paychecks come in, but they stretch thinner every month. Rent, utilities, food, transit, insurance, phone bills, it's like a tide rising faster than my income can keep up. The prices climb, my hours at work stay the same, and somehow, I'm supposed to keep the ship afloat without drowning. There's this constant, gnawing feeling of pressure, tightening, squeezing, that never really lets up. My job isn't bad. I'm grateful to have one in this economy, honestly. But it's the kind of work where raises are few and far between, and when they do come, they barely scratch the surface of inflation. Everyone around me talks about how the cost of living is outpacing wages, but when you live it every day, it becomes this suffocating cycle. The system feels rigged, like you're expected to keep up with expenses that grow faster than your paycheck without any real support or relief. And if you slip, even for a month, there's this avalanche of consequences: late fees, debt, the gnawing worry about what happens if your car breaks down or your phone dies and you can't fix it. I make choices every single day that feel like a balancing act on a knife's edge. Do I buy the slightly cheaper brand of food, even though it might not last as long or taste as good? Do I skip the doctor's appointment to avoid the copay, hoping nothing serious is wrong? Do I work an extra shift, sacrificing the little free time I have, just to cover rent? These aren't dramatic decisions, but they're the quiet sacrifices that add up. I've become an expert at mental math, calculating whether I can afford the bus fare or if I need to walk, deciding if I should pay one bill now and risk the other getting late. Emotionally, it's exhausting. There's a constant background hum of anxiety that never really fades. I try to keep it tucked away during the day, especially around friends and family, because I don't want to burden anyone or seem like I'm complaining. But at night, the quiet lets those worries swell. I lie awake thinking about what would happen if I lost my job or if my car suddenly needed a major repair. I wonder if I'll ever have enough saved to feel secure, or if I'm destined to keep living paycheck to paycheck for years to come. I catch myself holding my breath sometimes, when I open the mail or check my bank account, waiting for the other shoe to drop. That feeling of being trapped, where expenses feel like this relentless tide that never lets up, makes everything else in life feel like it's on pause. I want to dream, to plan, but those things feel so distant now. I used to have big dreams. When I was younger, I imagined traveling, maybe going back to school, buying a place of my own someday. I wanted to build something stable, to create a life where money wasn't this looming shadow that dictated every choice. But those dreams have been pushed back, put on hold indefinitely. Saving for a trip or an education feels like an impossible luxury when every paycheck barely covers essentials. The idea of owning a home feels like a fairy tale told to someone else. Coping with all this isn't easy. I've found small ways to carve out moments of peace, listening to music while I walk instead of taking the bus, calling an old friend to remind myself I'm not alone, writing down little goals to keep some hope alive. But there are days when the weight of it all feels unbearable. I'm learning to be kind to myself on those days, to acknowledge that surviving is enough, even if I'm not thriving. Sometimes I feel like I'm screaming inside but no one can hear it. It's not that I don't want help, I do, but the stigma of financial struggle runs deep. It feels like admitting defeat or failure, even though this isn't about personal shortcomings. It's about a system that's moving faster than I can keep pace with, a system that expects so much while giving so little. I'm holding on to hope, fragile as it is. Hope that one day, the numbers will shift, that wages will catch up, that I'll be able to breathe easier. Hope that the dreams I put away for now will have their chance. Until then, I'll keep navigating this maze, one day at a time, trying to find balance amid the constant pressure. It's not just about money. It's about dignity, freedom, and the quiet yearning for a life where I'm not always scrambling. I want to believe that's possible, even if it feels out of reach right now. Hey, friends! If you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what can be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. I used to believe that if I worked hard, played by the rules, and stayed persistent, I'd eventually make it. That's what they always told us growing up, right? Work hard, go to college, get a degree, and life will open up to you. I clung to that belief like it was a life raft. But now, at 28, with 2 degrees, a mountain of student debt, and a resume that looks impressive on paper, I find myself questioning everything. I live in a tiny studio apartment in a city that's far too expensive, but moving isn't really an option. I need to be here for work, a marketing job that looks good on LinkedIn but pays just enough to keep me afloat. My rent eats up over half my income. Groceries, utilities, insurance, transportation, and loan payments devour the rest. There's no extra. No safety net. No cushion. Just an endless loop of budgeting, sacrificing, and praying nothing goes wrong. Every day is a mental exercise in triage. Do I pay the credit card minimum or buy groceries? Do I say yes to a friend's invitation to dinner and risk overdrawing my account, or do I come up with another excuse to stay home? Can I afford to replace the shoes I've worn down to the sole, or can they hold up one more month? These aren't rare dilemmas, they're daily ones. It's exhausting. The hardest part isn't even the math of it all. It's the way it wears down your spirit. Constant financial stress doesn't just impact your wallet, it gets into your bones. It alters your perception of yourself. It robs you of sleep. It makes you feel like you're failing, even when you're doing everything you can just to stay afloat. I've cried in the break room at work. I've had anxiety attacks because I couldn't see a path out. I've laid awake at night calculating how many years it would take to pay off my debt at this rate, and realizing the answer felt like a life sentence. I didn't grow up wealthy, but I grew up hopeful. My parents worked hard, and they pushed me to do better, to reach for more. I was the first in my family to go to college. That was supposed to be the turning point, the step up the ladder. But what they didn't prepare me for was an economy that's rigged against people like me. Rent keeps rising. Healthcare is laughably unaffordable. Wages are stagnant. I've watched every facet of life grow more expensive, while my paychecks remain frozen in place. I've postponed everything. Travel? Haven't been on a real vacation in 5 years. Relationships? Hard to date when you're always broke and stressed. Kids? I can barely afford to feed myself, let alone imagine supporting a family. Buying a house? That's not a dream anymore, it's a punchline. I used to fantasize about owning a little home with a garden, something stable and mine. Now, I'd just like to get through the month without panicking about whether I can pay rent on time. I cope the best I can. I've become a master at finding free events, meal prepping to stretch my groceries, and scouring the internet for remote side gigs. I've learned to find joy in small things, a good book from the library, a walk in the park, a phone call with my best friend. I journal when the anxiety builds too much. I let myself cry when I need to. And I try, really try, to hold on to some version of hope, even if it's battered and bruised. I dream smaller now, but I still dream. Maybe one day I'll make enough to not feel like I'm drowning. Maybe I'll find a way to shift into a career that pays more, or finally pay off one of my student loans and feel a little lighter. I still hope for stability, for enough space in my life to breathe, to create, to imagine something more than survival. There's a strange kind of strength that comes from living like this. It's a quiet resilience, not the flashy, inspirational kind people like to put on Instagram. It's gritty. It's real. It's knowing how to stretch $10 across 3 days. It's finding ways to laugh when you want to scream. It's holding on to your sense of self when the world keeps trying to reduce you to a number on a bank statement. I wish things were different. I wish the system didn't make it so hard for people to just live with dignity. I'm not lazy. I'm not irresponsible. I'm just trying to make it in a world that wasn't built for people like me to thrive. And I know I'm not alone. So many of us are out here hustling, grinding, hoping, just trying to build something that lasts. If there's one thing I've learned, it's that survival is an act of resistance. Every day I wake up, go to work, and keep going, that's something. That's everything. So, I'll keep showing up. I'll keep fighting. And maybe, one day, the future I used to dream of won't feel so far away. Most mornings start the same way. I hit snooze one too many times, then stare at the ceiling for a few minutes longer than I should, not because I'm lazy, but because the weight of the day ahead makes it hard to move. Rent's due in 5 days, my phone bill yesterday, and I'm down to $18.42 in my checking account. That amount lives in my brain like a headline ticker, constantly scrolling, constantly reminding me of my reality. I'm 27, and I feel like I've been sprinting in place for the last 5 years. I graduated from college in 2020, peak pandemic. I walked across my living room instead of a stage, hoping a virtual degree would carry as much weight in the job market as the paper one. It didn't. I picked up temp jobs, worked food delivery, and eventually landed a position as a customer service rep for a tech company. I was grateful, sure, but also embarrassed. I'd gone into debt for a job I could have gotten with a high school diploma. At first, I tried to make it work, tight budgeting, saying no to every social invitation, learning to cook with beans and rice in 100 different ways. But then groceries got more expensive. Gas jumped. Rent, which was already squeezing me, went up by $150 last year, and another $100 this year. Meanwhile, my paycheck? A modest 2.5% annual raise, which gets eaten alive by inflation before I even see it. It's like I'm stuck in a video game on hard mode, and the rules keep changing just when I figure them out. I think a lot about how much this stress shapes my daily choices. I don't go to the doctor unless it's an emergency. My car desperately needs new brakes, but I've been putting it off because I can't afford the repair, so I drive slower, avoid highways, and pray. I limit showers to 5 minutes to cut the water bill. Every time I swipe my debit card, I flinch, hoping it won't get declined. And when it does, that shame burns hot and deep. No one tells you how heavy financial stress feels in your body, how your chest tightens, how you start associating your worth with your bank balance. The emotional toll is relentless. I smile and laugh with friends when I see them, but often I'm not really there. My mind is counting hours worked, dollars needed, how long I can delay paying my internet bill before it gets shut off. I've stopped dreaming big because dreaming feels dangerous. It sets you up for heartbreak. I wanted to go to grad school, maybe become a therapist. I wanted to travel, to see Japan, Italy, places I've only explored through screens. I even used to think about starting a family someday. Now, even the thought of a pet feels irresponsible. The worst part? I feel like I'm doing everything I was supposed to. I got the degree. I work full-time. I don't spend frivolously. And yet, I'm still barely making it. It's not just me, either. Most of my friends are in similar boats, living paycheck to paycheck, juggling gigs, picking up freelance work on top of full-time jobs. We're all exhausted. We joke about it sometimes, how we're the burnout generation, but the laughter always has an edge. I try to cope in ways that don't cost money. Long walks, journaling, talking to my mom on the phone. She understands, she raised us on one income, working 2 jobs most of my childhood. But she also tells me it wasn't this bad when she was my age. She could afford a small apartment and still save a bit. I can't imagine saving. I'm lucky if I make it to the next payday without borrowing money. Sometimes I fantasize about winning the lottery, not for luxury, but just for peace of mind. Just to wake up without the ache of anxiety in my stomach. Just to not have to make survival decisions every day. There are moments, quiet, fleeting ones, where I let myself believe things will get better. That I'll land a higher paying job. That the economy will shift. That I'll get a break. I have to believe it. Hope is fragile, but it's also the only thing keeping me going. I've learned that resilience isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just showing up. It's choosing to get out of bed and face the numbers again. It's saying no to hopelessness one more time. I try to remind myself that my struggle isn't a reflection of failure, but of a broken system. That we, this whole generation of young adults, aren't lazy or entitled. We're overworked and underpaid in an economy that sold us a dream and then raised the price. If there's one thing I've gained from this pressure, it's empathy. I see people differently now. I notice the stress in the cashier's eyes, the careful way someone counts change at the laundromat, the silence in a friend's voice when they decline dinner plans for the third time in a row. We're all carrying something. And though that doesn't fix the system, it connects us in quiet, powerful ways. For now, I'm still here. Still working. Still counting. Still hoping. It's strange how the small things pile up until they feel like mountains, those little daily costs that no one really talks about but that shape the whole fabric of your life. Like yesterday, I had to decide between buying a new pair of work shoes or filling up my gas tank. I ended up pumping just enough gas to get to work, and every time I step on the pedal, I can't shake this nagging guilt. That guilt isn't about being careless or irresponsible. It's about the system I'm trapped in, the one where my paycheck barely breathes against the steady, hungry march of bills and rising costs. I'm 27, working 2 jobs in a city that keeps getting more expensive. The rent alone eats up more than half of what I make, and everything else, groceries, utilities, phone bills, just keeps climbing. Sometimes I feel like I'm on a treadmill set to a speed I can't control. No matter how fast I run, the ground keeps moving beneath me. When I was a kid, I imagined that by my age, I'd have more freedom, more choices. I'd travel, maybe live on my own terms, buy things without counting every penny. But here I am, always calculating, planning, sacrificing. I look at my bank account and the numbers seem frozen in a pattern of scarcity. It's a math I know too well. Income minus expenses equals a number that barely changes month to month, and it's almost always too low. This financial pressure isn't just about money. It's a constant companion in my head, this anxiety that whispers, what if something breaks? What if an emergency hits, a flat tire, a health scare, a forgotten payment? They aren't just inconveniences, they're crises that could unravel everything. Sometimes, when I'm lying awake at night, I run through scenarios of disaster, trying to mentally prepare because there's no buffer, no safety net. I've had to postpone so many dreams. I used to want to go back to school, to study something I love, literature, philosophy, anything that didn't feel like a dead-end job. But tuition, textbooks, transportation, it all feels like a luxury I can't afford. Instead, I'm stuck working shifts that leave me drained, and by the time I'm home, all I want is rest, not to start another chapter in a book or chase a dream. Social life? Almost non-existent. Invitations to dinners or outings are double-edged swords. I want to say yes, but the cost, transportation, food, even a drink, adds up. And there's this feeling of being left out, of watching friends move ahead, their lives expanding while mine shrinks. The loneliness is a weight, but so is the fear of falling behind if I loosen my grip even for a moment. I try to cope in small ways. Cooking at home, which means simpler meals but healthier and cheaper than eating out. Using public transit, though it eats up time. Sometimes, I binge-watch old shows for distraction, or write little poems and journal entries to keep my mind afloat. These moments of escape are fragile, but necessary. They remind me there's still a world beyond bills and paychecks. At my lowest moments, I wonder if I'm failing. Am I not working hard enough? Should I just push harder, hustle more, sacrifice sleep and sanity? But then I remind myself this isn't just about me, it's about the world I'm living in. The economy moves in ways that don't favor people like me, the middle or lower income workers who keep things running but never seem to get ahead. There's a bitterness, sure. But underneath it all, there's still hope. Hope that things might shift, that maybe someday I'll find a way out, even if it's slow. That I'll be able to breathe without counting every cent, to live without this gnawing worry always lurking at the edges of my mind. Some days, I imagine waking up without the weight of financial stress, paying bills without second-guessing, buying groceries without guilt, maybe even saving a little for something just for me. A trip, a class, a hobby long forgotten. I know those dreams aren't impossible, they just feel distant, like stars barely visible in a cloudy sky. For now, I keep going, holding on to those small slivers of hope and the stubbornness that says I deserve better. I don't want to give up on myself or my future, even if the system makes it feel like an uphill battle every single day. Because in this mess of pressure and uncertainty, I am still here, still fighting, still hoping, still trying to build a life that isn't just about surviving but about living. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough for now. I never imagined that by the time I was in my late 20s, I'd feel so stuck, like I'm running on a treadmill that just keeps speeding up, and no matter how fast I go, I'm nowhere closer to getting off. It's this constant pressure, this weight pressing down on me every single day, and it's tied to money, the one thing I thought I'd eventually get a handle on once I graduated, got a job, and started my life. But the reality is so much harsher. I graduated college 5 years ago, full of hope and determination. I thought a degree would be my ticket out of the uncertainty, a way to build a steady life. But steady has turned into survival. The job market was tougher than I expected, and even when I landed a decent position, the pay barely stretched to cover the basics. Rent in my city has ballooned. Utilities, groceries, transportation, all costs have felt like they climb a little higher each month, faster than my paycheck grows. And when I say a little, I mean enough to make a real difference. Enough to make me hesitate before opening the fridge, wondering if I can afford to buy more groceries this week. Some days I wake up with this pit in my stomach. It's anxiety, I think, worry about the bills, the mounting credit card balance, the emergency fund that's still just a dream. I look at the numbers, and they never add up the way I want. Every month is a scramble. Sometimes I wonder if it's just me, if I'm somehow doing something wrong, not budgeting well enough or not hustling hard enough. But then I hear the same story from friends and coworkers, the ones with different jobs, different backgrounds, all struggling to keep their heads above water. It's hard to explain how this financial pressure seeps into every decision. Buying groceries is a calculation. Do I get fresh produce or stick to the cheaper canned stuff? When the car makes a weird noise, I hold my breath and pray it's nothing serious because I can't afford to fix it. I've started walking to work when the weather's good to save on gas, even though it adds an hour to my day. Social invitations come with an internal cost-benefit analysis. Can I afford dinner out with friends, or do I have to politely say no and explain it's tight this month? I don't want to be that person, the one always saying no, but it's become almost automatic. Rent is the biggest burden. I share a small apartment with a roommate, but even splitting the cost feels like a stretch. I've thought about moving somewhere cheaper, but it means sacrificing time on my commute or living in a neighborhood that doesn't feel safe or welcoming. So, I stay. I tell myself it's temporary, just until I save enough to move, but savings feel impossible to build. Each paycheck disappears quickly, some on bills, some on day-to-day survival, and some on the unexpected. Like when my laptop died last month, and I had to put a new one on a credit card because I can't work properly without it. The credit card debt is a shadow I try not to think about, but it's always there, whispering reminders of missed payments and interest that keeps piling up. I've started cutting back on small comforts, no more daily coffee runs, no more impulse buys on clothes or gadgets. I cook at home almost every night, which is good for my health but sometimes feels like a chore instead of a joy. Even my hobbies have taken a back seat because they often cost money: books, classes, going out to see a movie. Emotionally, it's exhausting. I'm proud, independent, and I don't like asking for help. But the stress sometimes makes me feel so vulnerable, like I'm barely holding myself together. Some nights, I lie awake wondering if I'll ever get ahead or if this is just how life is from now on, always chasing money but never catching it. It's lonely because it's hard to talk about without sounding like I'm complaining or making excuses. People expect young adults to be figuring it out, but what if figuring it out feels impossible? I've had to postpone dreams that once seemed so close. Traveling abroad, going back to school for a master's degree, even thinking about buying a home someday feels like a fantasy. I keep telling myself these are just detours, temporary sacrifices for a better future, but the future feels hazy and distant. I worry about what happens if I get sick or lose my job. The safety net I imagined doesn't exist. Instead, there's this system where expenses rise faster than wages, where inflation outpaces raises, and where the cost of living feels like a relentless tide rising against me. Sometimes I wonder about the choices I've made, but the truth is, I'm doing the best I can with the cards I was dealt. I try to focus on the small wins, the months when I can pay off a little bit of debt, the moments when I manage to save a couple $100s, the times I can treat myself to something small without guilt. I've learned to be resourceful, to stretch every dollar, to find joy in simple things: a walk in the park, a good book borrowed from the library, a home-cooked meal shared with friends. I still hold on to hope, even if it feels fragile. I dream of a time when I can breathe a little easier, when I'm not constantly stressed about money, when I can invest in my future without fear. I want to believe that this pressure won't define my life, that someday I'll break free from this cycle. But for now, I keep moving forward, one paycheck at a time, trying to remind myself that my worth isn't measured by my bank account. I'm more than the numbers on a screen, more than the debts and bills. It's a hard truth, feeling trapped in a system that's built to make getting ahead so difficult. But sharing this, being honest about it, helps. It makes me feel a little less alone. Maybe that's the first step towards something better. I never thought I'd feel so powerless at 27. They say if you work hard, things will fall into place, but my reality feels like the opposite. Every month is a cycle of stress and worry, a relentless battle where expenses climb faster than my paycheck ever will. It's like running on a treadmill that's speeding up, and no matter how hard I run, I'm stuck in the same spot. I live in a small one-bedroom apartment in a city where the cost of living feels designed to squeeze every dollar out of people like me, young, ambitious, but financially stretched thin. Rent consumes more than half of what I bring home, and the rest disappears into bills, groceries, public transit, and paying off the shadow of student loans that follow me like a ghost. I'm constantly calculating, recalculating, budgeting, rebudgeting, sometimes even cutting corners in ways that make me feel ashamed, like skipping meals or saying no to friends because I can't afford a night out. It's exhausting, mentally and emotionally. Some mornings, I wake up with a pit in my stomach, knowing I have to stretch every dollar just to keep the lights on. I hate that this financial pressure has become such a constant background noise in my life. It's not just about money, it's about what it does to me inside. The anxiety that coils tight around my chest, the creeping self-doubt whispering that I'm somehow failing, that maybe I'm not smart enough or lucky enough to break free. But deep down, I know this isn't about personal failure, it's about the system, about an economy that feels rigged, where wages barely budge but rents, groceries, and utilities climb relentlessly. I think back to my dreams, those wild, unfiltered hopes I had before reality tightened its grip. I dreamed of traveling, of seeing places I'd only read about in books. I dreamed of buying a small house with a backyard where I could grow vegetables, maybe have a dog. I dreamed of having the freedom to say yes to spontaneous plans, to save money for emergencies or retirement. But every one of those dreams has been postponed. Sometimes it feels like they've been quietly cancelled, replaced by an endless cycle of survival. Even relationships feel complicated by money. It's hard to imagine dating when you're constantly stressed about rent or bills. I worry about what partners might think when they find out how stretched I am financially, or worse, I worry that my financial situation will become a burden they have to bear. So often, I hide these struggles, even from the people closest to me, because I don't want to seem weak or incompetent. But keeping it all inside is lonely and isolating. I cope the best I can. I've become a pro at finding free or low-cost activities, meal prepping to avoid eating out, and clipping coupons like it's a competitive sport. I remind myself to find joy in small things: a quiet walk, a good book borrowed from the library, a call with a friend who understands. I try to celebrate little wins, finally paying off one credit card, or making it through a month without overdrawing my account. Those moments keep me going. But the emotional toll is real. There are nights when the weight of it all feels unbearable. Nights when I lie awake, my mind racing through worst-case scenarios. What if I lose my job? What if a medical emergency wipes out my savings? What if I never get ahead? Those fears don't just live in the background, they seep into everything. They affect my self-worth, my motivation, my hope. Despite it all, I haven't given up hope completely. I know my story isn't unique, and that helps sometimes. I dream in smaller ways now, dreams that feel just a little more attainable. A raise at work, a stable emergency fund, maybe starting a side hustle that can bring in some extra income. I'm learning to be kinder to myself, recognizing that surviving this system is no small feat. I want to believe that someday, the scale will tip, that the paycheck will catch up to the rising costs, that the stress will ease, and that I can start living instead of just surviving. Until then, I'll keep showing up, keep fighting, and keep hoping that this too will pass. Because despite everything, I still believe in a future where my dreams aren't just postponed but finally possible. It's hard to explain how it feels to be trapped in a life where no matter how much you work, it never feels like you're getting ahead. I'm 26, working full-time, doing everything I was told would set me up for success. I graduated college, landed a decent job, and yet, every month feels like walking a tightrope over a canyon that's only getting wider. The expenses keep growing faster than my paycheck, and I'm exhausted. I live in a small apartment on the outskirts of the city. The rent alone takes nearly half my income. When I moved in 2 years ago, it was manageable, but since then, rent has increased twice. My salary? It's barely moved. Inflation is this invisible tax that eats away at what I earn. I'm forced to make constant choices. Do I pay for groceries or my internet bill? Do I take the bus or try to squeeze gas money into my budget? Every decision feels like it carries weight, and I carry the stress of those choices every day. The grocery store is a battlefield. I scan prices, avoid anything with a price tag that makes me hesitate. Fresh vegetables often get skipped because they're pricier, replaced by canned goods and frozen meals that last longer but don't nourish as well. I used to love cooking, trying new recipes, experimenting with flavors. Now, cooking is more about survival than joy. I buy what's cheap and filling, not what's healthy or delicious. Some nights, I skip dinner because I'm just too tired or too anxious about money. Social life? Almost non-existent. I've had to say no to so many invites because even the smallest outing means spending money I don't have. It's isolating. When friends talk about weekend plans or trips, I feel a pang of jealousy mixed with sadness. Those dreams seem so far away, traveling, moving to a better place, even just buying a car. Things that once felt like attainable goals now seem like distant fantasies. Emotionally, it's heavy. The constant financial pressure leaks into every corner of my mind. I lie awake at night, heart pounding, thinking about bills, debts, and the emergency fund I never seem to build. I feel guilty about asking family for help. They have their own struggles, and I don't want to be a burden. But sometimes, the stress gets so overwhelming I can't hold it in. I cry alone in my room, overwhelmed by the sense of never being enough. Not earning enough, not saving enough, not doing enough to change my situation. There's a persistent feeling of being stuck in a system that's rigged against me. The cost of living rises, and wages don't keep pace. It feels like a treadmill that's speeding up, but my legs are getting tired. I try to remind myself that this isn't personal failure, but the reality for many young people today. Still, the loneliness in that realization is profound. To cope, I've found small pockets of relief. Writing helps, putting my fears and hopes into words. I've started meditating, even if it's just 5 minutes a day, to try to calm the constant buzzing anxiety. I reach out to a close friend now and then, just to remind myself I'm not completely alone. And sometimes, I let myself dream, even if it's just for a few minutes, about a future where I'm not so afraid of money. I dream about stability. About waking up without the pit in my stomach. About a home that feels safe, with enough space to breathe and grow. About being able to say yes to things without the immediate worry of what it will cost me. About a job that pays well enough that I can save, invest, and plan for the future. These dreams keep me going, but I've also learned to be patient with them, to understand that survival sometimes means postponing what I want most. Every day is a balancing act, between hope and reality, between what I need and what I can afford. It's exhausting and often lonely, but I'm still here, still fighting. I don't have all the answers, and I don't know exactly when or how things will get better, but I hold on to the belief that they will. For now, that's enough. I never thought I'd feel this way in my 20s, like I'm stuck in quicksand, sinking deeper the more I struggle to pull myself out. Every morning, I wake up knowing I have a list of expenses waiting to swallow whatever little money I manage to save. Rent, utilities, groceries, phone bills, transportation, it's a relentless cycle. The harder I work, the more I realize my paycheck isn't keeping pace with the rising costs. It's exhausting. I grew up hearing about the American dream, owning a home, having a stable job, maybe starting a family someday. But right now, even the basics feel out of reach. Some days, I barely have enough to cover rent and food, and I have to make impossible choices. Do I skip buying groceries so I can keep the lights on? Or pay the phone bill so I can stay connected for work? These aren't hypothetical questions, they're daily decisions that weigh heavily on me. I remember just a couple of years ago, before the cost of living skyrocketed, I felt like I had some control. I was budgeting, saving a little here and there, thinking about that trip I always wanted to take or setting aside money for a new laptop. But then prices jumped. Grocery bills doubled. Rent crept up again. Utility companies hiked rates. And my salary? It barely moved. A small raise here and there, but not enough to keep up. It feels like the world is moving forward while I'm stuck in place, watching prices spiral out of control, watching my hopes shrink in real time. Some nights, when the bills are piling up and I'm alone in my tiny apartment, I just lie awake wondering if this is going to be my life forever. Will I ever be able to afford a home? Will I ever have the freedom to say yes to spontaneous plans with friends instead of always calculating if I can afford it? The feeling of being trapped is suffocating. It's like I'm on a treadmill that's speeding up but my legs just can't keep pace. This financial pressure doesn't just affect what I buy or don't buy, it eats away at my emotional well-being. Anxiety is a constant shadow. I find myself avoiding phone calls or texts from people I owe money to because I'm ashamed or scared. I've had to borrow from family, which makes me feel like I'm failing to be independent. Sometimes, I just want to scream into the void, to tell the world that it's hard to keep going when everything feels stacked against me. But I try to cope. I talk to close friends who get it, even though they're in their own struggles. We exchange survival tips, where to find cheaper groceries, how to apply for utility assistance, ways to stretch every dollar. I've taken on a side gig, which means even longer days, but it's better than doing nothing. Meditation and journaling help me clear my head, even if just for a few minutes. I remind myself that this pressure, this tightness around my chest, isn't the whole story of who I am or what I'm capable of. There's still a part of me that dreams, even if those dreams feel distant right now. I dream about traveling, to places I've only seen in photos or on social media. I dream about owning a small apartment or house, a space I can call my own without worrying if rent will double next year. I dream about building a career where I'm not constantly anxious about money, where I can afford to buy a new laptop when mine finally dies instead of hoping it lasts just a few more months. But those dreams have been postponed, put on the back burner indefinitely. The reality is that for now, survival comes first. Every extra cent I can save goes to emergency funds or paying off debts. I've had to let go of certain experiences, like nights out with friends or hobbies that cost money. It hurts, but it's necessary. I keep telling myself this is temporary, that someday the economy will stabilize, or my career will take off, or I'll find a better paying job. The hardest part is feeling invisible in this struggle. People assume if you're young, you're carefree and financially fine. But that's far from the truth for many of us. The system is designed in a way that makes it almost impossible to catch up, especially when wages are stagnant but expenses are relentless. Sometimes I wonder if it's ever going to change, or if this is just the new normal. Still, I hold on to hope. I hold on to the idea that my hard work isn't for nothing. That someday, this constant pressure will ease, and I'll look back and see how far I've come. That one day, I'll have the freedom to make decisions without the shadow of financial fear hanging over me. Until then, I keep waking up, facing the bills, the anxiety, the sacrifices, and the uncertainty. Because giving up isn't an option, not yet. Not while there's still a dream to chase, even if it feels miles away. This is my reality. It's messy, it's hard, and it's deeply human. And I'm still here, still fighting, still hoping. I wake up every morning with this heavy weight pressing on my chest. It's not just the usual dread of getting out of bed or facing another busy day. It's the gnawing anxiety that comes from knowing my paycheck will barely cover what I owe, let alone what I actually need. I'm 26, working full-time, trying to build some kind of life for myself, but the numbers just don't add up. Every month it's the same story: rent is due, utilities are creeping up, groceries somehow cost more than last week, and then there's the car insurance, phone bill, internet, and on and on. It feels like the expenses grow faster than my paycheck, and I'm just running in place, gasping for breath. I remember when I first got my job, full of hope and plans. I thought, okay, this is it, I'm finally on my own, making my own money, and I'll be able to do all the things I dreamed about. I imagined taking weekend trips, saving up to get a better apartment, maybe even starting to put money away for a future that felt bright and possible. But reality hit hard. The cost of living ballooned while my salary barely budged. I've seen news stories, the kind that talk about inflation, wage stagnation, housing bubbles, and all those big terms that seem abstract until they're your own life. Some days, I don't know how I even keep going. I sit at my kitchen table, bills scattered in front of me like a cruel puzzle, and try to figure out what to pay first. The electric bill or the internet? Both are essential, but I can't afford both right now. Sometimes I skip meals so I can put a little extra toward rent. I've started relying on instant noodles and whatever's cheapest at the grocery store, even though I know it's terrible for me. I tell myself it's temporary, just until things get better, but the months stretch into years, and it's hard to see the light. This constant financial pressure seeps into everything. It's in the way I avoid calling my friends for fear they'll ask me to go out. I'm exhausted at the thought of social gatherings that cost money, and I lie awake at night, imagining the life I'm missing out on. Birthdays, concerts, vacations, these things feel like luxuries I can't afford. I'm terrified of the future because every step forward feels like a gamble. Should I try to switch jobs, knowing I might have to take a pay cut to get something better long-term? Should I move to a cheaper place, even if it means a longer commute and less stability? Sometimes I get angry. Angry at the system that seems rigged, where the people who need help the most are squeezed tighter and tighter. Angry at myself for not making different choices, for not being smarter or luckier. I know I'm not alone in this, so many people my age are stuck in this cycle, but that doesn't make it easier. There's a profound loneliness in feeling trapped, in knowing that the deck is stacked against you. Coping has become its own challenge. I've started meditating and journaling, trying to hold on to some sense of peace amidst the chaos. I lean on a small circle of friends who understand and don't judge me for saying no or being boring. I've gotten better at budgeting, even if it feels like an endless game of whack-a-mole. Sometimes, when I'm really desperate, I scroll through second-hand marketplaces or look for odd jobs to make a bit of extra cash, but it never feels like enough. The hardest part is letting go of dreams I once held so tightly. I used to want to go back to school, maybe get a master's degree or learn a new skill. I dreamed of traveling, seeing the world beyond this city that feels like it's closing in. I wanted to buy a car that wasn't falling apart or save up enough to move somewhere that felt like home. But now, those dreams seem distant, maybe even foolish. I tell myself I'll revisit them someday, but that someday feels like it's fading further away with every bill I pay. Yet, despite all this, I still cling to hope. It's messy and fragile, but it's there. Sometimes it's sparked by a kind word from a friend, a small accomplishment at work, or just the stubborn refusal to give up. I remind myself that this situation doesn't define me, even if it feels like it consumes every waking moment. One day, I want to look back and say I survived. I want to build a life where money isn't the thing that controls every choice, every feeling. For now, I keep breathing. I keep balancing the impossible math of expenses and income. I keep dreaming in whispers. And I keep telling myself that this is not the end of my story, just a tough chapter, one I hope to close sooner rather than later. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos. Also, leave a comment, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.